Hello, everybody from Alexandria, Virginia. Welcome back to another episode of On the Sports Clock. Joining me tonight is my former high school baseball coach, close friend, Coach Scott McGee. Coach McGee, two-time state champion for the Willard Tigers, won state in 2021 and last year in 24. They made Final Four appearances in 2012, 2013, 2019, and 2022 on top of those state championship years. They are in the Class 5 District 6, going to be the 1 seed against Parkview starting Wednesday at Central High School. They have a 28-8 record. Coach, always great to catch up. I know we talk all the time, but always great to see your face and catch up about Willard baseball.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoy how much you were tied into the national sports scene, and got to listen to your Art Haynes podcast over the weekend. Just one of those guys that has vaulted Southwest Missouri sports for decades now. And so I've been glad to get on here and talk a little Willard baseball and whatever else might come up. I see your jerseys in the background, and so we'll see.
Well, this one's for when Ed Lynch and Wally Backman and I do a podcast. So I've got kind of different podcast settings for different the living room, the background when I had Art on was at Missouri State. So I kind of got it set up. So still, I got to create a little Willard one. You got to send me a couple hats or shirts and I'll hang them up.
That'll work.
How's the outlook for districts this week?
It's good. We open up with Parkview. We're fortunate. We've already played everybody in our district. We beat everyone in our district, and we have not had to throw one of our top two pitchers. So they haven't really seen those guys. So that's going to be a good situation for us, I think. Ultimately, when you get to this time of the year, you're dealing with so many distractions. Your seniors are done with school. So do they even know what day it is? Are they going to show up to the park? You've got the non-seniors are in their finals. Summer baseball is right around the corner, and as well as anybody, for recruiting purposes, summer's a big deal. So guys start to worry about that a little bit. We took the weekend off to rest up a little bit, and then we didn't get to practice today because there's storms in the area. So you just got to be really flexible and roll with it. But we feel good about where we are right now, and just see if we can play well 3 more times here and win the district.
For sure. And I know last time, it was a couple of years ago, you were on my podcast and we talked about, we were not to reminisce about, negativity, but we talked about it set the tone for Willard baseball moving forward. Was my sophomore year, the 1 seed against, played the 8 seed Hillcrest and lost. And there was ironically the tornado a couple days earlier. It rained the night before. And you talk about the distractions, the prom, all that. And we just weren't ready to play, but I think it set the tone for later. Like, we're not going to let this happen again,
Yeah. That was one of those, that's when I was still trying to instill a lot of toughness into our program. And I probably made, when you're young, you make mistakes. I mean, heck, I'm 43. I still make all kinds of mistakes. And we had graduation the night before. We had project grad. It rained a lot. All the seniors stayed all night at project grad.
Yeah.
I should have said, hey, let's push the district back a day. Instead, I said, hey, we're going to show how tough we are. Everyone's going to get up here. We're going to start working on the field at 7 a.m. and we're going to get ready to play. Our starting pitcher was very ill. John Latham, just an ultimate competitor, one of those guys that built the program. And I made a bad decision on that one. And we played. We did not play well. We got beat. The next year, we lost in district semis. And then beginning with your senior year, we've played in the district title game every year since.
Yeah.
So there's never been a time we haven't been there. We're hoping to get back there again this year. But obviously this time of year, a lot of things can happen. One thing that is definitely happening right now is, it's kind of always been this way to some degree, but you really feel it this year, is that we are the biggest game on a lot of people's schedule.
Yeah.
And so they are very up to play us. Sometimes that means if we get a little bit of a lead, they kind of fold. But if they're kind of still in the game in the 4th or 5th inning, they play with so much energy. And so it's been a little bit of a struggle for us to match that at times. And we've got to make sure we're doing that this week and hopefully the weeks thereafter.
Yeah, and I was listening to a podcast you did with Scott Purrier earlier as I was preparing, and you were just talking about kind of how you've grown up as a coach, and I was there from day one, when we can laugh about it now, but when you got hired, I was like, I like this guy. He's excited. I'm excited to have him, and we said this the last podcast too, and I remember the first time you came in the dugout. Larry Cheney was my coach. That would have been going into my freshman year, and I asked Coach Cheney, you were sitting there. I'd never met you before, and I said, "Hey, am I playing the second game?" And you turn around, and you said, "You'll find out when the lineups produce." I'm like, I don't know how him and I are going to get along, but he just was like, well, and it turned out we were all right. But I was like, it was from day one. I was like, I could tell that you were serious, all that, but like it just to watch you grow as a coach too has been amazing.
Yeah, I think that you always try to find joy. I think I've really found my way in that I've coached to my own personality.
Yeah.
I grew up around really hard-nosed, tough-minded coaches, great men, and they were their authentic selves. And sometimes I tried to be a little more like them and not as much like myself. And I've kind of played into that a little more in the recent years, and it's made it more enjoyable for me and for our players too. I would say I still have moments where I'm a little, I do think being a head coach in a big program, no matter the sport, football, basketball, baseball, you sometimes have to be a little bit of an a-hole at times. Like you have to be a little bit of on top of things and a little bit stern. I think it just comes with the job. I don't love that part of the job, but I know it's a necessity. And so I can still do that, but probably it isn't 24/7, maybe like it always used to be.
Well, as an assistant, I feel like you have all the answers. And then as soon as you move one seat over to that head coaching spot, it's like all of a sudden you're the one who has to have all the answers, officially. So it's like I've never been a head coach, but I've been around enough of them. I've been an assistant. I know it's like we have all the answers, but then, and that's another thing too. I think about you've always hired great staffs, and I feel like coaches like to hire people they know. And I know you've done that with former players, Trevor Bowling, Steve Vaughn they just had a day, honoring Steve Vaughn, who's been a staple of that program. So, you want to surround yourself with the best assistants, in my opinion.
Yeah. I was going to say, you want people with your same vision, but have different personalities of the way to get there. Right. Coach Bowling's kind of our serious guy on staff now, so I don't have to take on that role as much. Steve Vaughn is the ultimate worker. I think we have very similar visions on how baseball should be played, but we have different personality types. We get along with different types of kids. We have different interests outside of baseball. And so trying to meld that into something, I think, is what I'm always trying to do. And so I don't want, 4 assistant Scott McGee's on my staff. I want different types of guys, and I've really tried to be cognizant of building that. And I've been lucky that the school has let me hire some people, and that those people have worked extremely hard, both in the classroom. They're good people. They're married. They're have children, and they set a really good example for all the young men in our program.
And going along with that too, you brought up in that podcast with Scott about, ironically, Scott and Scott, go figure. But you brought up, you've been through a lot of ADs, a lot of, Jeff Staley was there a long time. And then since then, I think you guys have had 3, maybe going on 4 athletic directors, a lot of principals, but it seems like, baseball's remained a constant. So like, what's the, administration support been like? Obviously it's been stable, but talking about like all the changes, like you're always kind of on your guard, I feel like, but like you also, have to adapt and hope that they support you, which I feel like they have.
Yeah, that's a great point. They've been very supportive. I think everyone has different areas of focus, and you have to sometimes find a way to meet them in the middle. We have had principals that don't care about baseball at all. We have a principal right now who's a former assistant, Daniel Davis, and he does a great job. And he wants to talk about our lineup in November. So that part's great. The AD's been. I've always worked for great ADs. Same thing. They have different personalities. I think when you're a subordinate, it is part of your job to try to find a way to get along with that person above you too, and know what they want you to do. And I've always tried to pride myself on not being high maintenance on that stuff. I'm not going to them every 3 days asking for more money for something. I try to take care of everything myself. And I think the best thing that all of our admin has done is they've let me be in charge of my own schedule. So I've been able to push us, not just at the varsity level, but at the JV level, at the freshman levels. We play quality opponents. We maximize our number of games, and that allows us that every year we can keep on rolling. So, we lost 11 seniors last year from a state title team, and we still have a chance to be right back there this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about, going back to your first year and, I remember pushing just because my dad's a Camdenton grad. There was some about playing Camdenton baseball. I just, it was a personal motive for me. And, no disrespect to Camdenton, but they're not exactly football, different story, all the power to them. But baseball, they, not exactly, but I remember you emailing saying, we'd like to set up a game. They never email back or whatever. And, they're lost, but it's like now you're playing. I feel like you play more teams out of state and out of the area than ever before. So it's funny to watch that kind of evolve,
Yeah, I think you're always trying to find a way to push your players and make them excited about something. I think you've got your rivalry games. For us, that's, a lot of years it's Nixa, Glendale, Republic. But then outside of that, there's some teams in our area that we play every year that the kids aren't super excited about playing. So how can we go out and get some big time opponents and play them and expose them to different types of baseball? I never want to be in a postseason game and we're seeing something better than we've already seen. So like if we were going to face a Division I catcher in the postseason, I would have faced multiple Division I catchers in the regular season so that it's not something brand new to us. And so I kind of try to set up the schedule with that in mind. And I think it's been really beneficial.
Yeah. And I think about too, how you've built the program from, even elementary school. I mean, it's starting there where you all are grooming the kids to be Willard Tigers, so it's like I feel like there's a connection. And I haven't lived in Willard since 2015. So, I haven't been around the program, but I stay in touch enough. I observe enough to know, like, I feel like that has helped build the program because you're starting them early now, would you say that's a benefit? And the other thing too, is the facilities. I mean, we were talking last time about that, place off of West Bypass that was like we thought we had hit a home run, no pun intended, with an indoor facility. Now you have one behind the outfield fence, so it's like
yes, we have our indoor facility behind the outfield fence. We just renovated this weekend. We've got 4 cages in there.
Oh, wow.
Which helps a tremendous amount. Starting June 24th, we're going to be turfing our baseball field, which will be awesome. Then we've got Spearing Yards, which has 3 youth fields at AB and 266.
Okay.
Right next to about $4. There's like $4 generals and then 3 youth baseball fields all right there.
It's out there near going toward Elwood, right?
Yes, it is. Yes,
okay.
It is.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we've got those, and so we've got all these youth kids now that grow up and play. And I think it's important that they play for Willard. It's also important that they're building friendships and they're staying connected to the game. As well as anybody.
Yeah.
At age 10, 11, 12, sometimes basketball, football, soccer are a little more exciting. You play left field as a 4th grader, you might go weeks without touching the baseball.
Right.
And so how can we keep those kids connected and keep them around? Because once you're good at baseball is really freaking fun. But it takes a while to get good at it. I think football and soccer, they can be pretty fun. They're so action packed that they can be kind of fun even if you're not very good. But in baseball, you got to get good to have fun with it. And so keeping those kids engaged and playing with their friends has been a huge part of that.
And I think the one thing you taught too, kind of piggybacking off of that, is mental toughness. I never really understood what mental toughness meant. I'd hear it from you all the time in high school, but I was like, what are you talking about? But then now that I've kind of been through the grind, I wasn't a good player by any means, but I just being around it and hearing it from multiple coaches, it's like, it's a real thing. Like, I almost feel like sports is 60-70% mental toughness and heart, and the other is the talent, and maybe you can tell me I'm wrong, but that was the one thing you preached from day one I've always appreciated.
I think that getting yourself to do the things that you don't want to do every single day, because that they're simply a requirement for where you want to be, like you have to do this. And that's, I think especially a sport like baseball, if you want to be a good hitter, you have to hit 6 days a week.
Absolutely.
How many days do you feel like hitting? Probably twice. But if you want to be a good hitter, you got to make yourself do it the other 4 days too, or you're never going to make it. You have to make yourself lift. And so sports really teaches that. You've worked a variety of jobs. Some of them you've loved, some of them you've hated. You can't just say, oh, I hate this job, I'm not going to go in for the next week.
Right.
You have to make yourself do it until, and that's what mental toughness is. And I think if you want to be a mentally tough adult, trying to get yourself to do that when you're young, is a huge part of it. And I really think that's what extracurriculars, not just baseball, but all extracurriculars, even marching band, speech and debate, which you were really good at, Those things teach that. How many times did you not want to stay up late on a Friday night preparing for speech and debate, but you had to do it because you knew you wanted to do well,
Yeah.
and that was simply a requirement for the job. And your buddies might have been doing something else, but you said, I got to do this, and it's got to come first. And that's what mental toughness really is. And I think that's really beneficial for kids.
For sure. And I appreciate you bringing that up about speech and debate and the Friday nights, and I remember even cutting cards on Christmas. I remember calling my buddy Austin Reed. He was my debate partner on Christmas. He's like, you do know it's Christmas, right? I'm like, yeah, I'm cutting cards right now, but I think when you pour your heart and soul into something, it means a lot more once you reap the benefits. And that's a lot of what baseball, band, speech and debate taught me. And that's what I really appreciate about Willard was the extracurriculars. Yes, the sports are there. There's a focus, but I really felt like they did a good job of supporting people like myself who were involved in both sports and extracurricular. And I would not be where I am without, that kind of well-rounded, environment. So definitely appreciate that,
I think that one of the things that a vision for every school should be, does every kid here have something that they feel connected to, that they feel like they can work hard through? We should always be looking to add things that allow that, because those things make a difference. And you say, well, you're not going to go pro in speech and debate. And that's true. Most of our guys are not going to go pro in baseball,
right.
But those lessons then immediately transfer over to other areas of your life. Your work ethic in speech and debate just immediately jumped into the things you did at Missouri State and the things you did at Loyola. And then whenever you got your MBA and like all that kind of stuff that you just had to push through, that you might not have ever done. If we didn't have speech and debate, if we didn't have band, like you probably would have never learned those lessons and your life would be totally different. And even though you knew you weren't going to, play a musical instrument for a living,
right,
those things really, really helped you out in life.
For sure. And those, and I appreciate that. I really do, Coach. And no, you and the baseball program are right up there with all those, I've got my trophies right here. With all my moves, 6 moves in 10 years, out of state moves, they've always come with me and, I've still got baseball shirts and hats. And, I've been very fortunate, and it's because of people like you who really supported me and that's all great. But this is about, Willard baseball and the future going forward. And I'm just so happy to be an alum of it. Like I'm so appreciative. So thank you for letting me, just be part of your life and the program's life. Like publicly, I don't think I've ever said thank you. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. I know you appreciate it. And I appreciate you as well.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward here too, as we wrap up the next few minutes. Again, wrapping up here, and I know the artificial turf is going in. So is the field going to be all artificial turf, just infield? What?
So the whole field's going to be turf. We're also turfing 4 bullpens on the home side and 2 on the visitor side, and it's going to be a game changer for practice. Right now there's days we practice for 6.5 hours. People say, why do you practice so long? Well, a lot of that is we have one infield, and you have to drag the infield and you have to water it. And then you might do it again in the middle of practice. We're literally going to be able to set up an infield and left field, an infield and right field, and an infield on our game field. And what was taking us an hour and a half, now it's going to take us 30 minutes. Wow. And all those hours add up. Wow. And in the days of bad weather, be able to go out there and practice or play, be able to schedule a lot more home games. I'm old. I don't want to ride that bus too much longer. So, driving to Excelsior Springs because they have turf and it's a 3-hour trip on a Tuesday night. It's not something we have to do anymore now. So it's going to be really good.
I dreaded the trips to Rogers, Arkansas. And it's like, that was only an hour and 45 minutes. Yeah. Or McDonald County. That was another one where I was like, where are they taking us?
Yes. Well, the McDonald County trip, that wasn't very fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have to ask too, you were talking about the infield. So I remember, and we can laugh about it now, but behind the dugout, there was grass that was meant for just people hanging out, whatever. But it was actually like an infield, all that. It was grass with bases on it. That's about all it was. But that's where we practiced a lot. If we couldn't get on the big field, is that still what's the fate of that now?
We still have that, and we actually built another one of those behind the center field wall. So just to try to make it all work, and now those things don't have to happen as much. Kind of going back to administrative support and And, they've allowed us to do things like that. The go-to has always been, if it's not going to cost us much money, you guys can continue to push your program. And I've always tried to be really creative. Steve Vaughn has helped with a lot of those things.
Yeah.
How can we get better at baseball, without spending a ton of money? And then when we do have some money, we spend it only on things that make our players better. And that's really the value to the turf. The maximizing their time, the maximizing their ability to get better at baseball is what we're trying to do. And so everything we've done has been that way, and we're super excited about it. I don't know how long it's going to take to get done. They have not told me an end date, so I'm just going to put my head in the sand and ignore that part. But I'm excited about getting that when it's done.
Two more questions, Coach. First, so a lot of analytics in baseball. You and I have talked plenty of times about that, but has it, even since last time I had you on the show, has it changed? And the other thing too is with the whole everything in college baseball, the NIL, the portal, has that changed you as a coach and influencing players on where to go to college, or do you just still kind of stay out of it and be a positive reference, but let them do their thing?
I give advice about going to college, but I don't want to push them either way. I don't really care where they go to college. I think sometimes people say, "Oh, I want you to go into this school because it somehow makes me look better." I don't know how that would ever make me look better or worse,
right,
based off the number of Division I or Division II or JUCO players. I mean, I've had some really, really good players that were also really good students that I've kind of advised, I'm not sure you should go play college baseball. Two of our best players right now, Brighton Tao and Jackson Phipps, they could definitely play college baseball, but they're going to be very successful in the academic world and work in the medical field and work in engineering, and they're going to really good schools and not playing baseball. I think that's beneficial. I will say the biggest advantage to the portal is for kids that grow up in places like Willard. It used to be like if you thought you could play in the SEC, you would have to basically travel to the Southeast all summer, go to all their camps, and hopefully play well enough that somebody might notice you. The chances were very slim. Now, go to a school around here. Go to a D2 school. There's a bunch of good ones in our area. Go to Missouri State. If you play well enough, you'll get NIL money to go to one of those schools. And I hope Caden Bogenpool stays at Missouri State and becomes a legend next year, maybe makes him a run to the College World Series. But, Bogenpool's from Jackson, Missouri. He probably had no chance to go play at Florida or LSU coming out of high school. He's come to Missouri State. He's put his name on the map. And if he's good enough now, he could go to those schools if that's what he wants to do. And so I think that part really helps. Back to your first question about the analytics in baseball. I do think analytics matter. We don't get as deep into the weeds. I don't think things like spin rate and all that stuff for high school baseball should be something that you should be focused on.
Right.
I do believe that in high school baseball, the strikeout to walk ratio, both as a pitcher and a hitter, is extremely important. I think that whenever we look at on-base percentage is a very high value. What the Oakland A's were doing in the early 2000s with Moneyball, I do think that there's maybe not as much of an emphasis on plate discipline in high school baseball. We're not ever trying to walk, but walks are a byproduct of our offensive approach. And so those are things that we talk about pretty significantly. I don't want you up there just swinging at the first pitch wildly all the time to try to hit singles. Like, we're trying to slug, we're trying to draw walks, we're trying to do all those things. So I do use that part of analytics as far as like spin rate, vertical break on the mound, exit velos. I'm not as quite into that for high school baseball. I do think that they probably have some value at the major league level, but I don't work in that field. And so I do think that all numbers matter, but they have to be taken within context. If you told me that you got a pay raise of 8% last year, that would matter. But it doesn't tell the whole story. I mean, did you have to work twice as many hours? Were you making $20,000 the first year? Like, there's a lot of context that's missing there. So, and I think it's that way with analytics as well.
And where do you see, Coach, wrapping up, not to hold you up, but where do you see high school baseball? I think about where I was, 07, 08 was my freshman year, and where it is now, and then where do you see it? I'll just throw a number out there, the next 10 years. Like, what's the biggest, change you anticipate the next 10 years in high school baseball?
Baseball is going to continue to blow up here in the next 10 years in our state. We have kids in our conference going to play at the University of Arkansas that may not even be all conference level players. We have so much talent right now. You're seeing kids buy into lifting year round. The weight room has made a huge difference in baseball programs. You're seeing schools put a huge emphasis on baseball. I mean, there's now when a coaching job comes open, there's administrators reaching out and trying to hire the best coach and willing to pay extra money to get them.
Oh, wow.
And then you're having all of this focus on player development from the coach's side, and the summer baseball programs are getting better about that stuff too. It's no longer just looking for the best talent and putting them on one team and going and playing tournaments. You're seeing some of the data be worked on and developed there. So I really think baseball from now to 10 years ago is way better, and I think it's better in 10 years because you have kids who can come in as an 8th or 9th grader and say, I want to be a Division I catcher. How do I do it? And there's now a plan in place, and for you to be able to do that, the avenue is there if you want to get better at that. And so I think that's going to continue to blow baseball up in our area.
Yeah, and it's exciting. Like I said, I've been following it. Obviously, you and I are very close. So, I stay in touch, follow what you all are doing. And it's, I'm very proud to be an alum. And like I said, I appreciate you allowing me just to have a small, minute hand in the program. My couple
You got a bigger one than you think, but yeah.
No, I wouldn't say that, but I appreciate that. And last question. So talk about the facilities real quick. So I remember the dugout. We were talking earlier about, when the tornado basically destroyed our field. And I think that was a blessing in disguise because we got those new dugouts courtesy of the building trades program, and the press box, which is where I spent a lot of time. Has that changed at all? I have not been up there in probably 10 years, 12 years. Has that changed? And just the overall, the stands. I think the last time I was there was I was moving from Florida to Delaware. It'd probably been 3 years ago. So what else has changed around there since I've last been to the field?
So the stands are still the same, and they're going to be staying the same. We did redo our press box just a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And it is really nice now. It has AC in it, which is nice. So it's not so hot up there. There's a little more room, a little better visibility. The windows are not rotted out anymore. Flooring, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So the dugouts have been awesome. Unfortunately, the history of Willard. They've had that baseball field since '62 as a baseball field. Yeah. Since the 1940s, they've done things out there. The go-to forever has just been to add dirt to the infield, so our field is very unlevel. Because of that, the dugouts are unlevel, as is the backstop. So as part of this program, we're actually tearing down both the dugouts and the backstop to make things level. So those dugouts have been phenomenal. It's about to storm here in Willard, and probably the safest place to be is in those dugout sheds because Steve Vaughn built them, and we probably should have the whole town go try to pile into those to survive any sort of bad weather. But just kind of the renovations that we're doing there. We have a new outfield fence as of a couple years ago. We have the facility behind the right field wall. And then within our school, our weight room's been renovated. So all those things, and all that stuff doesn't matter if you don't work. Like you have the prettiest stuff, but if you don't work on it, it doesn't matter. And so we do have a lot of kids in our program right now who are really hard workers. And a lot of our middle school kids coming up are up there all the time. We just had a tournament this weekend, and there were so many kids around trying to get better at baseball. And so I'm really excited about the future of this place.
For sure. Well, Coach, I appreciate it. Always great to have you on. Thank you again for taking time to do this. I know you're spending time preparing for this week. Best of luck. And I look forward. One last thing real quick. So I remember when you guys won state in 2021, I just flown from Clearwater to Fort Lauderdale. And I was like, I gotta listen to this game. So I'm walking off Fort Lauderdale Beach. And as soon as you all won, I called you and left a voice. Of course, I knew you probably weren't going to pick up because you were a little busy, which I understood. But I left a voicemail and I just said, I told you from day one you were going to win a state championship for Willard, and or you were going to coach Willard to their first state championship. And that was awesome. And I hope you did it again last year, and hoping you do it again this year. And I hope I'm making that phone call again here in a couple of weeks.
I really hope you are too. I was kind of I know we're going to wrap up, but in 2020, we thought we'd win a state title. We were nationally ranked in the preseason. And we had 15 seniors, and that group was so motivated to succeed.
Yeah.
And, so when that season got canceled, I literally told my wife, I said, that was our chance to win it. Like, we're not going to have another chance. Like, we're never going to have that level of talent again. And so then the next year, to just prove myself wrong. I mean, like, our kids just proved me wrong. And to come back and win it. And it's kind of like, you break that ceiling. As soon as you do it, now every group views it as a real possibility.
Yep.
So we didn't win it in 2022, but all the kids were like, we should have won it that year, and then we win it in 24. Our kids this year, they think they can win it. We'll see if we can. There's a couple of really tough teams in our state that we're going to have to go through. But, I think that once the one group does it, and you were part of this, every group has to move the program forward.
Absolutely.
You don't go from average to great in 2 years as a program. You might have a team that does it, but your program doesn't do it. And every year your program has to move forward. And I feel like we're still having kids that are doing that all the time. They're just moving our program forward.
Well, and I think too, not to keep you, but I think that's from my freshman year to senior year. I think about the guys that, I was with who I'm not going to name names because I'll miss some, but it's like, we weren't very good, but there was just something there. I think there was chemistry. Chemistry has a lot to do with it. Then going into my sophomore year, it's like, okay, we're good. We were that 1 seed. Junior year, had some ups and downs, but then senior year, we were like, there was that one team down, I'm not going to name their name, but on the border out west that it's just like they were always a pain in the you-know-what. And then it's like after that, the door was wide open. So it's like, it comes down to the 1 or 2 teams, I feel like. But I feel like to get you to that point, it's the chemistry. And I always felt like Willard had good chemistry. It was just how do we get these guys to mesh together ability-wise and be able to take that next step? Maybe
some of that stuff mattered way before. Our ability level wasn't high enough at that time.
Right.
But the work ethic was there. The chemistry was there. And I'd say the ability. We had players with ability, but as far as you need 20 players who can really play, and we didn't have 20 at that time. So, but we're just kind of working and trying to develop that now.
Yep. And you need a manager that can keep his mouth shut.
You could probably do a podcast on your interactions with umpires and the things you see about the other team's coaches.
So we'll have to have Tony Hill on, definitely.
Yeah.
You remember the one time, I know I texted you about this, where I was like, and Tony Hill, I one of the, if not the best umpire in Southwest Missouri, at least that good friend of mine.
He is the best one, yes.
And he was having a rough game. And I remember you were coaching third base. And I turned around and he had said something that pissed me, or he had done something that pissed me off. And I can't remember if it was Cobb or Latham, whoever. And I yelled, if you're going to be bad, at least be consistently bad. And you turned around and your eyes got this big and you're like, shut up. You're like, don't talk to the umpires. And, I could go on and on. And they were all great. There were a couple of them I couldn't stand, but for the most part, they were all great. But it was like, I got away with a little bit more than I probably should have.
Well,
I apologize.
I agreed with the stuff you said. So maybe not on Tony Hill, but sometimes I agreed with you. I just didn't want to say it.
Well, and I apologize publicly for putting you in a position where I knew, and I think I told you this a couple of times where I was like, I know you're thinking exactly what I'm saying, but I know you can't. You're in a position, so I knew that. But it's funny now. We can laugh, but it's all part of it. That was my speech and debate coming out in me. Yeah. Coach, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. Tell the family hello. Again, good luck this week. We'll be in touch. And after this is all said and done, let's make that, or I'll make that phone call and let's do this again after it's all said and done. So
I hope we can do that here in a few weeks. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Good luck, Coach. Coach Scott McGee, Willard Tigers head baseball coach, off to districts, and best of luck.